I'm Father James Reuter, the parochial vicar, one of the parochial vicars for the Northwest 5 region, and we're here to talk to you about Father Ned's request for us to celebrate Masses beginning in Advent ad Orientem, and that's a fancy Latin way of saying facing toward the east, sometimes also called ad Deum, facing toward God.
Yeah, people ask, why ad Orientem? Why are we doing this? You know, what is the point of all of this? And I can't really speak to it from, high theological levels. I can speak to it from my experience. I mean, I've only been a priest for a few months now, and I'm still learning the Mass. I'm still learning how to pray. But from the very first Mass, I knew there was a definite difference in how I enter into this prayer when I'm praying ad Orientem versus when I'm facing the people. And it's not because, the people are distracting or anything like that. Like, yeah, there's parts of that in there, but I can focus pretty well, and it's more than that. It's not about a distraction, but it's about the opposite. It's about how I enter into something. And hopefully it's not just, well, we don't see Father's face, but they see more than my face, because the Mass is not about me. It should never be about me. It's I'm disappearing so that I can be in persona Christi Capitis, the person of Christ, the head of the church, leading the people in this sacrifice. And hopefully by doing all of this, it's not just me praying better, but them praying better as well. This experience of ad Orientem, I think, is highlighted in a particular prayer of the church. In the Mass, through him, with him, in him. At this moment, I raise these elements which have just been consecrated. Of bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ, and I pronounce through him, with him, in him, speaking of Jesus, through Jesus, with Jesus, in Jesus, to the glory of God. And when I'm facing the people, it loses that, because it's like an announcement towards them of, look at this thing I've done. But when you celebrate ad Orientem, in this moment where you chant these words, you're facing the crucifix. You're lifting the sacrifice which has just been offered through Jesus in the person of Christ, with Jesus, and in Jesus, who you are looking at directly. And all of a sudden, this beautiful prayer, this beautiful chant of the Mass makes sense. And that's why we're going ad Orientem. We're going ad Orientem because these beautiful prayers are finally going to be offered towards the person we're talking to.
We are symbolically turned toward God the Father, who is, of course, invisible, but we visibly turn toward the crucifix, the central focus of the church, which gives us a visual reminder of the fact that Jesus, the Son of God, offered himself in sacrifice for our sins and for our salvation to God the Father, and so that we unite together focused on the love of God the Father. There's other profound symbolism as well, that the liturgical direction of east is not an accident. That comes from both the scriptures and from the tradition of our Jewish ancestors before us. When the priest is celebrating the sacrifice of the Mass, the Eucharistic prayer, the church through most of our history has offered that in that posture, in that direction or orientation.
I went through deacon formation. I've been a Catholic all my life, and I never heard of Mass ad Orientem. And a couple years ago, Father Martin Fox introduced it at St. Remy Parish in Russia at the 9 o'clock Mass, and I was the deacon there at that time. And I was like, my first reaction was, why is he doing this? Why do we have to have this change? We always resist change. I think it's so human to resist, and I'm part of that. And I was having a certain amount of resistance, and lo and behold, I had a assist at the altar at the 9 o'clock Mass, and I had my first experience of Mass ad Orientem, and I loved it. I was able to really lose myself in the spiritual moment of consecration in the liturgy. Where in the past, I had a certain amount of distraction, because we're facing the people, and I'm thinking about some of those things that you would think about when you're facing a crowd of people, and this wasn't happening. During other key parts of the Mass, where, like the Liturgy of the Word, and the part where Father elevates the host, he turns around and faces the people, it makes complete sense to me.
I used to serve since I was in 5th grade, and I remember different priests coming in, and we served a certain way and we did a certain thing, and then the priest changed, and I know I was upset when that happened. It was such a difficult thing, but as time went on, we kind of understood why the priest changed and why they didn't. And I would just want to point out the one big change that I really get out of celebrating Mass at Orientem is about the sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for us on the cross. And every time that we come to Mass, that sacrifice is made present on the altar. And us priests, we want to be invisible. We want to get out of the way. We want you to focus on the sacrifice. So we don't want to be on the altar being talk show host, if you will. We want to help you, lead you to Christ. So we're facing the same direction with you so that we can pray and offer this sacrifice for you.
So it's my hope and prayer as our parishes begin to change that orientation for the Advent season to help us to lift up our hearts to the Lord as we together face eastward direction.
I'm here to encourage you to be open-minded and to really lose sight of the fact that this is change, and to just open your heart, open our hearts to something new. I think you will find it to be extremely valuable and sets up a whole new sense of the sacrament of the Eucharist, where we can really enter it into it more vibrantly than before.